You can't move.
I was looking through
That's
it.
a noisy chair you got there. All right.
How about I stand up?
It's going to be a long time.
Okay, I want you to state your name and your affiliation.
Hi, my name is Tracy Delgoto, and I'm a sergeant with the Brownwood Police Department in Brownwood, Texas.
Good.
I'm going to sit down here so our eye level is the same as the camera.
Good, so I don't keep looking up.
Yeah. Do you think the police officers are what is it about police officers that might be unique in handling grief?
As police officers, we, especially on patrol on the street, we go from call to call to call, and sometimes it's, you know, an imperative call or a stressful call or, you know, a death of somebody, and then the next call that you go on is directing traffic at a school, and the next call might be looking for a lost child. And so on the streets, when you're dealing, you know, helping other people deal with their stress and with their grief, you don't ever have a time to deal with your own. And so I think that police officers have a very difficult time in their own personal lives dealing with their own grief and admitting that it's there, allowing themselves to take that time instead of, you know, jumping from emotion to emotion to emotion to emotion, actually just being able to feel for themselves is very difficult.
Do you think that being a police officer makes you more being a police officer to me you would seem to be almost less judgmental because you've seen it all. Do you see what I'm saying? Do you ever have that sense?
I think probably being a police officer makes you more judgmental because you see the worst of the worst all the time, so I guess you become cynical and you almost expect that it's going to be the worst of the worst each time.
How do you go, how do you deal with that on a day-to-day basis to keep your spirits right and the ideals that you went into the job? How do you keep those ideals?
Well, I have to keep reminding myself that I joined the police department to be able to help people, and I have to keep reminding myself that there are good people out there. We just don't see them on a regular basis. I try to keep a sense of humor. You know, most police officers have a pretty sick sense of humor, but it does help with the stress and with the things that we do see and deal with. But I also go home to my family life, and I'm now married to another police officer, and once I walk through the door, I know that I don't have to deal with the day's work. I can go home and be Tracy the wife, Tracy the mom, you know, and just relax and be me. And
you weren't afraid that you were going to end up talking shop all the time?
There's times where we do talk shop a lot of times, but we have so many other interests together that, I mean, when we do talk shop, it's natural and normal, I think, for both of us, but we transition very well into other things like dancing or the football game or, you know, what our children's events are. We're able to transition back into mom and dad very well.
By not judgmental, I kind of mean that you no longer are sort of shocked by things that would on any given day would be the thing that I would be talking about for the rest of the month or something. You see on a daily basis, and you just become sort of numb to the not numb to it, but you just kind of expect this craziness of life, I guess, and it doesn't. Can you still be shocked? Or?
Oh, I'm still shocked. I I don't get the adrenaline dumps or the adrenaline rushes that I used to, but there are some things that still shock me. Even I can't believe somebody has done something. Just recently we had an incident that I'm still kind of shaking my head over how somebody could be so cruel and so mean to be able to commit a crime in the manner that they did. So
What was it? Do you mind asking?
it was a man who murdered his wife, put her in a dumpster, and had her body was dumped in the local landfill, where she was pushed over the edge, and they were grading the trash when the men at the landfill found her body. And I just think what a horrific death, and what a terrible, terrible place to leave somebody's body. You know, I think everybody deserves better than that.
Are there things about the job that you thought were going to be easy that were hard, and things that were hard that you thought were easy?
Yes. Of course, when I first started, I figured I would come in and change the world. We know that doesn't happen, or I know that doesn't happen now. I think probably one of the most difficult things that I've had to deal with is being a female, and I have to continually prove myself over and over and over. Every day, every new officer that comes in the department, I have to prove to them that I can handle myself, that that I'm their equal or above as a supervisor. And the officers that are male, the male supervisors, don't have to do that. So
19 years ago, that was, you were on the frontiers there,
yes, sir, I was.
what was that like going through the academy?
When I went through the academy, I was actually the only female that graduated, finished the academy. There were several others that started that dropped out of the academy through various stages. And so I was just the token female and just one of the guys. The academy was actually not very difficult for me. The schoolwork and the physical parts weren't difficult for me. It was actually coming onto the streets and proving myself, that was difficult.
And there must have been a point at which you felt like you had established that credibility, and it seems like that would unfortunately require you to do something that's really tough instead of maybe perhaps brave. You see what I'm saying? Or maybe something that really is a great piece of police work.
Mm-hmm.
There's running into that burning building, or there's having to shoot out or something. And then that's a wonderful heroic thing to do, which is very obvious. And then there's that great piece of police work, which might not be so obvious to somebody. And that would seem to be something that would be much more tangible that you would work with. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
what were the things that you did that you proved yourself? How did you prove yourself?
I have done just about everything. I still get into fights. I still jump in on the fights with the officers. I still go out and work traffic. I still go out and help and assist on their calls. But I've done numerous things, from sexual assaults to robberies to burglaries to drugs. You name it, I've probably done it.
You felt that you had to maybe be have you ever allowed yourself to show emotion that a male could maybe get away with? Or you have not allowed yourself to do things that a male could probably get away with?
I used to just, cut off all the emotions and just kind of hide from it. I don't anymore. Of course, I've been there for 19 years, and I don't have, I don't have the fear of ridicule that I think that I used to have. And at this point, you know, I'm secure in my position and secure with the department. I run a shift, have a very good relationship with the officers that I work with, and so I'm able to be a little more lax with my feelings or my protective coating that I used to have to wear.
How much are you able to handle problems now, as opposed to when you started, like in Andy Griffith, where you just use common sense and he would go in there and just kind of solve a problem, barring on rigidly apply the law to? Are you still able to do it, or are those days gone, or?
I actually think I probably get better as the years go on because I am calmer. I do have a lot more common sense. I have a level of maturity that allows me to go in and take a look at whatever the case may be that we're working on, and to calmly be able to start picking out the elements and start, you know, delegating items or chores to the other officers. And with the years of experience that I've had, I can, you know, I can look at something and say, oh, you know, we worked a burglary just like this, or a string of burglaries like this 15 years ago. It was so-and-so that was committing them. Wonder if he's still in jail, you know. So I do benefit greatly from that, from the experience that I've had.
This is going to be a hard question to answer, but you can think of maybe three qualities that make a good cop. What are the top three qualities that we narrow them down to?
Honesty, integrity, and sensitivity.
Why honesty?
If you don't have honesty, if you can't be trusted to tell the truth and to do the right thing, then your word means nothing. Every case that you make will be thrown out of court. You're no better than the bad guy.
Integrity?
Integrity and being maintaining your professionalism, doing the right thing, doing what you say you're going to do. You know, once your integrity is jeopardized, once again, you're useless on the streets.
Why sensitivity?
Sensitivity is something that if you would have asked me 10 or 15 years ago, it certainly wouldn't have been sensitivity. But I have learned through the years to treat people with respect and to get on their level and to be sensitive to their needs. Used to, I would try to protect people from the truth. Say it was a horrific car accident. You know, I would try to hold them back and say, no, you don't want to see that. You don't want to deal with that. And I was making decisions for them that wasn't my right to make. Now I'm a lot more sensitive to their emotions and what they're going through, and I feel that that's very helpful in helping them deal with the entire situation, whether it be domestic violence, whether it be a homicide, whether it be an accident or a SIDS death, or what have you.
Give a new recruit police officer some tips for handling someone who is just something that's just terrible has happened to them or someone they love, and they just found out, and they're just either panicking or first of all, tell me what do most people do when they have experienced, just found out something that they have is life altering? What do they do? I mean, I have a lot of experience.
There's never a everybody does this. You know, everybody acts differently, and that's the awful thing, is you can't just put your finger on, well, they're going to do this at this minute, and they're going to act this way at this minute, and then you can do this to make them better at this minute. It doesn't work like that. You know, we're all different, and we process things differently. You know, I've had some people pass out and faint when given awful, terrible news. I've had some people, you know, break down and cry. I've had some people punch holes in the walls. I've had, you know, I've had some people not change their outer emotions at all, to where I could tell at all that there was any difference. So there's, you know, there's no stereotype.
Can you ever tell from you get to size up the situation before you go in there?
Right.
Can you ever get an idea about what their reactions might be?
Usually once I'm in there talking to them for a few minutes, I've had enough experience with, not just as an officer, but with people, to be able to handle, however, to be able, me, myself, to react to whatever their action is. But just initially walking in and starting to talk to them, no, I don't know how they're going to react.
What would you, what special skill do you think that you have personally in helping someone in that situation?
I have been through an awful lot of situations in my life, deaths, numerous deaths of very close loved ones, grief. I have lived through domestic violence. I have lived through loving an alcoholic. I have lived through the death of my husband, the death of my brother, the death of my mother. And so I think that I am a lot more sensitive to their needs, and am able to reach out and help them, maybe identify with them.
Those things, for some people, having gone through those things might have made more difficult to deal with those kind of situations.
Mm-hmm.
Did you make a conscious decision that this is an area where I want to help, where I want to be?
I think I was kind of thrown into that. I realized that there was a need, and I did not believe that our department was handling situations properly. Like, for instance, when I learned of my husband's death, it was a motorcycle accident, and one of our officers came to my home, picked me up, took me down to the accident scene. He was supposed to be care flighted from the accident scene. Well, being an officer does not always, actually probably works against you if you're involved and it's one of your loved ones, because of all the things that you know that the general population, general public doesn't know. Well, I knew that the aircraft should have already, the helicopter should have already lifted off, and when we arrived it was still on the ground, so I knew that there was trouble. I also knew that the officer scanned out all the other radio traffic on the radio, so I knew that was a sign of trouble. So we had all these things working against me. When I arrived on the scene, I had everybody trying to hold me back and, no, 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 you can't see, you don't want to see. And the only thing I wanted to do was see. And so I think after walking through, I guess you'd call it the shadow of death, you know, after walking through that several times, and reevaluating, you know, how I had acted or how I had responded to these before on duty, putting myself on the other side, I didn't like anybody taking my control away from me, and I wanted to be able to maintain some control and to be able to make these decisions for myself. And so I little by little realized that there were problems with the way we were handling situations, and I started changing the way that I reacted to them on the streets.
Are you glad that allow you to go and see his body?
I fought my way through the firemen. I pushed one of them backwards and punched another one in the face. And I mean, it wasn't pretty, and I'm not proud of what I did, but I was able to get onto the back of that ambulance, and I was able to see him while he was, even though he was sedated and they were giving him CPR, and you know, I think I knew at that point that he wasn't going to live, but I was able to see it, and I think that gave me just a little bit of a head start on dealing with what was coming, the trauma that was coming. I didn't give myself that sense of false hope. So.
So it was important, and now you bring that to the department. Do you insist that, not that you insist, but if someone wants to see the body, that's important that they go to their side and so forth?
Yes, and not so much on the street on a motor vehicle accident, because most of the time the family's not notified until they're at the hospital. But what I have changed is, before I would tell them, oh, once again, you don't want to see that. It's you know, it's terrible. Don't remember them like that. And now, you know, I let them know it's not pretty. They're bruised. They're cut. There's blood. They're intubated. There's a tube, you know, taped down to them. You know, there might be catheters and IVs and things like that. And I try to prepare them. If they want to go in and see them, that's their choice. And, you know, I no longer try to make their decisions for them.
And going through that, how did it change you?
Oh, I think it's made me tougher. It's made me softer. It's made me more sensitive. It's made me probably a better officer. I'm better able to deal with not only my own things. I'm able to, you know, to handle my own stress in my own situations better. But I'm able to pass that down to the officers that work on my shift and have them handle situations differently and be more sensitive. So it's changed me a lot.
I want you to switch gears just a little bit, and you're speaking directly to a survivor in those hours. And I want you to give just a brief background about why they will want to hear from somebody who has credibility in this issue that's been through this. So I want you to, first of all, explain why you have that history, and give them some advice. They're at home, they're alone, they're in those just sort of empty hours.
Do you want me to, I mean, tell about his death, or what do you want? What do you want me to?
Just briefly, I want you to explain why you've had that experience and you've been where they are, and give them what advice you have.
Okay. Most recently, my husband was killed 4 years ago in a motorcycle accident. He was not a police officer, but I was. His death was absolutely devastating to me. He was the breadwinner of the family. He was my heart, my soul, my rock. He was everything to my children. And I thought at the moment that his life ended that mine did as well. And it was very, very, very difficult through the next probably year. Every day I woke up a different person. I walked through grief. I went through every stage of grief that there is, not once, not twice, many, many, many times. I read every book possible on trying to get through this and trying to be normal again. And the one thing that absolutely angered me the most was every book that I read told me there's no more normal. This is a new normal. And I didn't want a new normal. And I would get to that point in every book, and I would sail it across the room. It would hit the hit the door, hit the wall, what have you. I was still going to be normal. I was not going to allow this to change me as a person, because I didn't want this, and I wasn't ready for that. And yet, what I realize now is that it did change me very much. And I have developed a new normal. And there's not a day that goes by that I don't think of my husband. I think now more of the good times and the wonderful times that we spent together laughing, or I'll think, he would have loved to have eaten this, or see a restaurant and think, that was his favorite food, or that's what size shoe he wears and they're on sale. I still think about things related to him every single day. But the further along I get, the longer it becomes in years from the time of his death, the less I cry, the less I'm angry. I think I finally realized, probably at about 1.5 years, that I was grieving so hard and I was so angry, and the only person that I was hurting was myself. I was hurting myself, and I was hurting my children, and I was hurting the ones that love me the most. Because when you're angry, it just dwells at your soul and your heart, and it takes you, just takes you apart piece by piece by piece. And so things buzzing.
You did.
That's your
In
phone.
those first, I guess, days, or you didn't want to contemplate getting over it.
No, I didn't want to face it. I didn't want to deal with it. I was confused, yet I knew everything that was going on, but it was like time had stopped for me. I was confused. It took every ounce of energy that I had just to be able to get up and take a shower. And I had lots of friends and lots of family and lots of support around me, but I was so alone. I was so alone. And what I felt like was that 2 weeks after his death, when I'm left there all by myself trying to develop my new normal that I didn't want to begin with, everybody else was hopping back on the merry-go-round, and they were going on with their lives. And nobody was stopping to allow me just to fall apart and grieve. And they wouldn't stop the world for me. And I was very angry about that. I was very, very angry, and still very confused about what just happened, and my whole world has changed now, and how can everybody else just go on with their life while I'm hurting so badly?
If it's impossible for someone to, not impossible, but very difficult for someone to, you know now that you were able to look back on it.
Sorry, Trace.
What advice would you give them, since you know that the new normal doesn't work in those first few hours?
No, it doesn't. It certainly doesn't.
What words do work that give them comfort?
Another thing that I hated to hear was one day at a time. To hell with one day at a time. I was having a hard time making it through a minute. My life had torn apart. And I would probably the best advice is do whatever it is that makes you okay. If that means screaming in the shower, then scream in the shower. If that means punching the pillow, if that means going and running 5 miles at midnight, if that means staying in bed for 6 hours watching the Oprah show, Do whatever it is that brings you comfort. Whatever it is, do it. And know that you're eventually going to get through this. The pain does ease. You never get over it, and you never forget, but it does get easier.
Do you feel like you've become, in some ways, a receptacle of his dreams and hopes and so forth?
I think I have. I had a very unique marriage. I had the fairy tale romance. We loved each other. There wasn't a day that went by that I didn't know how much he loved me and vice versa. And so I think one of the reasons that I had such a hard time getting through with this is I was 35 years old when he died, and I kept thinking, I'm too young to be a widow. I'm just absolutely too young to be a widow. This wasn't supposed to happen to me. And then on top of that, you hear about, Cinderella and your true love, and we as little girls dream of Prince Charming and running off with the man that we love. And you hear about true love once in a lifetime. And all I kept thinking was, I will never have this again. I will never find true love again because I've had it. And now what do I have to live for? And that was very difficult for me, very difficult. I have since learned that true love doesn't just come around once in a lifetime. I have remarried, and I am remarried to my best friend, a wonderful man who you can't compare the two of them. They were both wonderful, wonderful men. And one thing that is so similar about both of them is I've never heard anybody say a bad word about either one of them. Me, of course, absolutely, but I've never heard anybody speak ill of either one, my deceased husband or my current husband. And so, being remarried, I take nothing for granted. I take absolutely nothing for granted. I make sure he knows how much I love him. He makes sure that I know how much that he loves me. We live each day to the fullest, and we just know that at any time it could be our last minute, and never leave anything left unsaid.
Yeah,
Thank
I
you.
told you she was tremendous.
Yeah.
You did great, Tracy. You just did tremendous.
Thank you so much.
You're